Here's Joe Biden. He goes down to Charleston, South Carolina. In Pennsylvania last week at Valley Forge, he tried to divide us all on political lines, but that's not good enough for our divider in chief. Now he needs to go to Charleston, South Carolina to divide us along racial lines as well. He went to a predominantly black church, and there's a lot to draw from this speech, but we're going to begin today at the end, where he finishes with a rousing quotation from a famous Southern gospel hymn that brought the crowd up to their feet. Listen to how he plagiarizes another famous American politician.
My fellow Americans, this is a time of choosing.
Now I know what you're thinking. Oh, he plagiarized another famous American politician, and he just said a time for choosing. He's plagiarizing Ronald Reagan. Yeah, that's right. That was the name of Ronald Reagan's speech that he gave in 1962 when he was making the case for Barry Goldwater. But no, you're wrong. I mean, you're right. He is plagiarizing Ronald Reagan, but that's not the really atrocious part. Watch what he says next.
My fellow Americans, this is a time of choosing. So let us choose the truth. Let us choose America. I know we can do it together, and it's the gospel song sings, we've come too far from where we started. Nobody told me the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. My fellow Americans, I don't think the good Lord brought us this far.
Yes, that's rousing. That's inspiring. It got those people up on their feet cheering him as he quoted that famous black gospel hymn. No one told me the road would be easy, right? Does that sound familiar? Where have I heard this before? Where have I seen this exact scene before?
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. And we know if we finish this march, what awaits us.
Now, to be fair, Joe Biden didn't completely steal from Hillary Clinton on this one because he didn't do the really atrocious, patronizing, insulting Southern black accent. I don't feel no ways tired. Oh, man. But it's the same cadence. It's the same manipulative approach that got everybody up on their feet cheering, right? Somebody who wrote this speech for Mashed Potato Brains clearly knew what would happen if he quoted from this gospel song. They knew that, well, because it worked before in 2008 when Hillary Clinton was running for the Democrat nomination against Barack Obama, by the way. She was trying to out-black Barack Obama, and that, well, didn't quite work out right. But let's just watch them side by side one more time, shall we?
This is a time of choosing. So let us choose the truth. Let us choose America. I know we can do it together, and it's the gospel song sings, we've come too far from where we started. Nobody told me the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. My fellow Americans.
You know, when it comes to shamelessly pandering to a black audience, it doesn't get any worse than that, unless you're Hillary Clinton. Here's her from 2008.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy.
It's the exact same quote. I mean, the exact same. Do they think we're imbeciles? They do. Answer to the question, they do. So there it is. Hillary Clinton should absolutely, I mean, listen, we're used to plagiarism from Joe Biden, aren't we? So, but just so you're keeping this straight, and Hillary Clinton absolutely should sue at this point. That's my gig. That's my shtick. Joe Biden plagiarized Hillary Clinton, plagiarizing black pastors from the South. And all for a divisive, manipulative, patronizing, and cynical attempt to get votes from the black community in America because, well, they're just like them, aren't they? I mean, look at Hillary and Joe. They might as well be black Southern Baptists, right? In fact, Joe made that case in his speech.
Without the truth, there's no light. Without light, there's no path from this darkness.
If you really care about the lives lost here, you should honor the lives lost and call for a ceasefire in Palestine. Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
Now, this is a moment during the speech when, while trying to divide us all along racial lines, President Biden was interrupted by pro-Hamas terrorist protesters screaming for ceasefire now in Israel, as they are angry that he didn't spend more time dividing us along racial and religious lines. And it's like Biden is like, hey, today's race day. Friday was politics day. Today's race day. I'll get to dividing us along religious lines next week. All right. We've got an agenda here. Don't preempt it. Those protesters not only somehow made their way into a Secret Service protected event like this, but later in the evening, after flooding Manhattan with 1,000 protesters that we'll get to later in the program today, they also tried to make their way onto Andrews Air Force Base here in Washington, D.C., to demonstrate as Air Force One was landing. How is it they hardly ever get arrested? And if they do get arrested, how is it they just keep coming back for more? They're terrorists, literally. Here's Joe Biden dividing us a little bit more.
I was talking downstairs. I've spent more time in the Bethel AME Church in Wilmington, Delaware, than I have than most people I know, black or white, have spent in that church. Because that's why I started. No, I'm serious. I started a civil rights movement. I used to go to 7:30 Mass, then I'd go to 10 o'clock service with the Reverend who was then running the church, is now the bishop. She's a bishop, and I'm told your bishop had been there before in South Africa. That's where he is right now.
I don't know if anybody followed the stream of conscious discussion right there that Biden threw out there, but let's just be clear. All of that is a lie. He has not spent more time. I mean, well, hold on. To be fair, Joe Biden is about 174 years old. And so just based on longevity, if every 5 years he's gone to one service at the First AME Church in Wilmington, maybe he has spent more time there than anyone else alive, just because he's been around for so long. But yeah, he was born a poor black child. Don't forget it. And so he loves, at the same time, he will tell you that he spent more time in a First AME church because he started the civil rights movement. Is that what he said? I've started the civil rights movement, he said. Because, Dr. King was inspired by Lily White Joe Biden. At the same time, he will tell you that he spent more time in the First AME church than anyone he knows. He will also always be sure to remind you that he is a devout practicing Catholic who is in favor of abortion on demand and same-sex couples and all the tawdry things that have happened in his family. But he's a very devout Catholic. Don't forget it.
Those pushing the big lie have a conspiracy theory among conspiracy theories that outweighs them all. That there's what, but here's the fact. There's where we don't have facts. Their whole theory has no facts, has no proof, has no evidence.
All right, did you follow that? Because that was the money quote, baby. This is Joe Biden bringing it home like no one else can. Making the firm point about the big lie and the election and... I'm sorry, let's watch it again because I have no idea what he's talking about, actually.
Those pushing the big lie have a conspiracy theory among conspiracy theories that outweighs them all. That there's what, but here's the fact. There's where we don't have facts. Their whole theory has no facts, has no proof, has no evidence.
I think the Biden-Harris re-election campaign should put that on a bumper sticker. That is inspiring stuff there. I mean, no wonder our adversaries around the world quake in fear at this commander-in-chief and his brilliant national security prowess, because he can so properly articulate American ideals like that. The hell did he say? There's more.
That's the America we're building together. Instead of erasing history, we're making history.
Oh, Yes, instead of erasing history, they're making history. This is a good time for an update to the story we talked about yesterday, where the Biden administration was planning on ripping down the statue of William Penn, the founder of the colony and eventually the state of Pennsylvania. They were ripping the statue down, which certainly sounds like erasing history. They've actually reversed that position now. They're oh, that was premature. We were just open to discussion. We weren't really planning on doing that. They were literally going to rip down a statue of William Penn. And of course, he and his party are very much in favor of renaming streets and tearing down statues and pretty much erasing history as we know it. I mean, they embraced the 1619 Project, for God's sake. But no, it's good for him, again, to divide us along racial lines at a black church in the South by claiming that his political opponents, that would be you're interested in erasing history. There's more of Biden in South Carolina.
So a home owned by a black family on one side of a highway, built by the same builder on the other side of the highway, and a white guy living in it. The white guy's home is valued more than the black guy's. No, I know you know it. But guess what? That's how you build generational wealth.
Okay, so a couple of things here. First of all, you saw that thing. He does it all the time. No, I'm serious. No, I'm serious. No, I'm serious. He constantly does that. That's like a verbal tick of Joe Biden's. He will say something and he'll get a reaction from the audience, and immediately, dude, nobody thought you were joking. Okay. So he was about to do that, but then he realized that would be insulting to his audience, which I got to say, probably the most nimble moment of thought that I've seen from Joe Biden in a couple of months. See, if he said to a predominantly black audience after making that racially charged accusation that a house built by the same person owned by a black man on one side of the street is worth more if it's owned by a white man on the other side of the street. If he told a black audience, no, I'm serious, it would be insulting to them, because he'd be suggesting that he, the whitest man in America, Joe Biden, knows more about racial discrimination than the black audience that he's speaking to. So he saved himself and said he's about to say, no, I'm serious. And then he said, I mean, I know you know this.
Was valued more than the black guys. No, I know you know it.
You see what he did there? But this whole idea that a house built by the exact same person on one side of the street owned by a black couple or a black, oh, actually, no, I'm sorry. I said black couple because that's more appropriate, because these days you don't buy a house unless you're a dual income family because of Biden's economy. But did you notice he says black guy, white guy? How dare you suggest that you know the gender of an individual? What, it's only men that can buy houses in this society? And who are you to say what a guy is? By the way, pal. The bigotry from this person. This human. I don't want to belabor that point. The fact, yes.
It's funny that he says that's how you build generational wealth.
But
that's not how his family builds.
That's true. Like, he knows everything about building generational wealth. Really, I thought the way you build generational wealth is sell access to your dad when he gets a high position in elected office, and milk money from, the communist Chinese and the corrupt Russians and Kazakhstanis. That's how you build generational wealth. I guess the other way, though, is to purchase a home and then sell it and keep that money in your family for generations. This whole idea that the exact same house built by the exact same person, but it's owned by a black guy on one side of the street versus the white guy on the other side of the street, that the house is worth less if a black guy owns it. Could you show your work, please? Could you please give us some kind of backup? Remember when we lived in the world of trust the data, trust the science, which, by the way, we shouldn't at this point, since we've been lied to so much. But should he be able to just make this accusation without actually having anything to back it up? Number one. Number two, who's buying a house right now in this economy, regardless of the color of your skin? Thanks to Joe Biden, interest rates are up into 7% and more for the first time in a couple of decades. When he took office, interest rates were around 2.75%. No one's buying a house, regardless of the color of your skin. In fact, the housing crisis in America right now is really the responsibility and fault of the fact that only corporations can afford to buy new homes, new affordable homes at least. And Biden's not saying anything about that. No, because then it would be his fault and his economy's fault, and he'd actually be addressing a real problem. Instead, His whole purpose yesterday was to, I'll say it again, divide us across racial lines. Then there was this.
After the historic movement for justice in the summer of 2020,
The historic movement for justice in the summer of 2020. I don't know about you, but I have vivid memories of the historic movement for justice in the summer of 2020. And it involved a lot of cities burning down. It involved a lot of private business owners losing their inventory or losing their business due to arson. By the way, a huge majority of those business owners were Black entrepreneurs whose businesses were looted and destroyed via arson because of the, I'm sorry, what was it called again? The
historic movement for justice in the
Yes, the historic movement for justice, when the police had to put on their historic movement for justice gear to protect them from bottles being thrown at them, and buildings were burned down in the name of historic movements for justice. People's lives were lost because of the historic movement for justice. I'm pretty sure they were riots. But here's Joe Biden reframing the summer of 2020 because you won't remember.
summer of 2020, I signed the most significant police reform executive order in history.
The most significant police reform executive order in history. And by the way, 3 years later, crime is at an all-time high in American cities due to that police reform executive order. He also reveals something very significant about that executive order in this speech.
I signed the most significant police reform executive order in history. We didn't get the law passed, but guess what? I did it by executive order, significant part. But now Congress has.
So we didn't get the law passed. So guess what? I just went ahead and signed an executive order and pushed it through anyway. If I recall, a few days ago, this guy was standing at Valley Forge with his fists clenched, screaming at the camera about his political opponents being authoritarians and fascists. Maybe it's me, but when you're bragging about the fact that when your party controlled the legislative branch through the House of Representatives and the United States Senate, and you still couldn't get your law passed, so you just signed it in yourself unilaterally, I'm thinking that's kind of fascisty. It's certainly sort of authoritarian-y. It's definitely not constitutional republic-y. And here he is bragging about it. He's right. It definitely is a time for choosing.